In 2023, Israel was grappling with deep-rooted internal divisions which were centered on the proposed judicial reforms. This tense domestic situation was abruptly overshadowed on October 7, 2023. Crossing the border from Gaza, Hamas and other Palestinian armed groups launched a large-scale and a brutal attack on Israel. The violence marked the beginning of one of the region's most devastating wars, with militants killing and also taking hostages. Nearly a year later, the war has claimed thousands of lives on both sides. The Gaza Strip has been left in ruins, and most of its residents, nearly 2 million, are now homeless. In Israel, over 200,000 people have been displaced. They've been forced to flee their homes near Gaza and in the north, which is close to Lebanon. The conflict now threatens to spread into Lebanon and potentially across the broader region. Hamas-led attack had abruptly shifted Israel's focus away from the internal political debates about judicial reforms and political divisions that had resurfaced as the war continued. Some senior military officers also resigned. They took responsibility for the security disaster of October 7. On the other hand, the Palestinian demand for statehood remained unresolved. Efforts were made to reform the Palestinian Authority, to restore its legitimacy. Even diplomatic attempts were undertaken to support the rebuilding of Gaza. But nothing could prevent the widespread destruction or the ongoing loss of life in the region. The conflict has had severe economic crisis. It's affected trade and commerce not only in Israel and Gaza, but across the entire region. Look at this World Bank report, for instance. The number of people facing severe food insecurity skyrocketed by more than 200 million. That's between the year 2019 and 2021. And if this war continues, analysts fear that it could further exacerbate the crisis. The global rise in food prices, already driven by the Russia-Ukraine conflict, has worsened the situation. And the full scale of the impact of this particular war is yet to be measured. The rising energy prices, another result of the war, is one of the bigger concerns. Now, the Middle East is the world's most critical energy-producing regions in the world. According to the 2023 Statistical Review of the World Energy, the region holds 48% of the world's proven oil reserves. In fact, in 2022, it produced 33% of the world's oil. The US Energy Information Administration also reported that in 2018, 1/5 of the world's oil supply passed through the Strait of Hormuz. Now, this is a key choke point for global energy. If this prolonged fighting continues, expect a surge in oil prices that will affect you. Look at what the conflicts in past have demonstrated. Iraq's invasion of Kuwait in 1990, for example, led to a 105% increase in oil prices within a span of 3 months. In 1973 and 74, remember the Arab embargo that caused a 52% price hike. And then in 1978, the Iranian Revolution led to a 48% increase. Factor this, the International Monetary Fund reported that the cost of shipping a container from China to the Mediterranean Sea has quadrupled since the war began. It was earlier $1,000. Now it's $4,000. Any Israeli strike that disrupts Iran's 1.7 million barrels per day of oil exports would send shockwaves through the global energy markets. And if Iran retaliates by targeting other oil exporters in the region, the consequences are unimaginable. The conflict between Israel and Hamas has expanded beyond a localized affair. It's drawn in other regional powers. It has raised fears of a wider war. Several factors contributed to this instability. The US continued supporting Israel through arms shipments, Hezbollah's refusal to stop attacking Israel without a ceasefire in Gaza, and the repeated failure of ceasefire negotiations. Even though recently the US and France attempted to broker a 21-day ceasefire between Hezbollah and Israel. But the Israeli Prime Minister, Benjamin Netanyahu, rejected that proposal outright. Hezbollah, which frames its attack as support for Gaza, is unlikely to agree to a ceasefire as long as Israeli operations in Gaza continue. Israel, on the other hand, is bolstered by its military success. It shows no signs of backing down. Hezbollah has so far avoided escalating the conflict into a full-scale war. However, the involvement of these regional players does raise concerns that the conflict could spread further across the Middle East. And as this conflict drags on, there remains no clear end in sight. The region faces increasing uncertainty as violence and instability continue to escalate. The critical question remains: how long can the region edge towards a full-scale war before stepping back becomes impossible? As US Secretary of Defense Lloyd Austin once asked, how does this end? So far, there's no clear answer. And the war continues to inflict devastation, not only on Gaza and Israel, but on the wider region, with significant humanitarian, economic, and political consequences around the globe.